Hey friends, welcome back to Grand Adventure. I'm your host Mark Guido, and we're spending this week exploring the history and the wonderful camping in the beautiful Lake Champlain Valley surrounding Crown Point and Ticonderoga, New York. So come along. For this week's Grand Adventure, I'm back in some of my old stomping grounds for the first time in nearly 30 years. We're in the beautiful Lake Champlain Valley, which is shared between the states of Vermont and New York. We're spending this episode on the New York side of the southern part of the lake, in the area of Crown Point and Ticonderoga. I lived for a time about 90 minutes south of here. I also lived for a while about 45 minutes north of here. I used to travel right through here every winter weekend to my ski patrol role in Vermont, and it's very, very good to be back. We're camped this week in the Crown Point campsite, a New York State Park campground that just opened for the season 2 days prior to our arrival. This is dry camping on manicured grass pads for $18 per night. There are 63 reservable sites here, many of which line the shoreline. The campground features hot showers, a dump station, and a boat launch. Campsites are capable of holding any size RV and are blanketed with grass all summer long. The campground rests over battlefields and fort locations dating back to 1775. All 49 acres of the campground are listed in the National Register of Historic Places and have been designated by the United States Secretary of the Interior as a National Historic Landmark. The Crown Point Lighthouse sits within the campground, just a few hundred feet from our campsite. It was built in 1858 and was given a new facade in 1911 to honor explorer Samuel de Champlain, who first traveled here in 1609. The Champlain Bridge at Crown Point lies just to the north of the campground and is visible from many of the campsites, including ours. It's one of the few bridges linking New York State and Vermont. The last time I drove across this bridge, it was a different bridge, built in 1929. After being deemed structurally unsound, this replacement bridge was completed in 2011. I don't often look for dinner in a bait shop, but Norm's, located just a couple of miles south of our campground, isn't your traditional bait shop. I've decided to pick up a seeing eye pet to aid Zoe in getting around the RV. Scratch that. I've changed my mind. Yow! When we come right back, following a quick ad break, we'll explore the historic colonial-era forts at both Crown Point and Ticonderoga, and check out the more recent history of both Ticonderoga and Port Henry. So stick around. Crown Point State Historic Site lies immediately adjacent to our campground. It is home to not one, but two important historical forts. Once at the front line of the New World clash between two colonizing European nations, the two forts' ruins are now operated as an historic attraction by the state of New York. The French built Fort St. Frederick here in 1734. The fort's walls were constructed of native limestone, 12 feet thick and 4 stories high, with cannons on each level. It was manned by hundreds of officers and troops. The fort gave the French control of the frontier between New France and the British colonies to the south, as the only permanent stronghold in the area, until the building of another fort 15 miles to the south at Ticonderoga in 1755. Many French raids originated here, and it was a target of British operations in the French and Indian War. From this strategic location, at a narrow point in Lake Champlain, the fort was capable of halting all north-south travel on the 125-mile-long lake. During the French and Indian War, British forces moved against Fort St. Frederick in 1759, and the retreating French destroyed it. Rather than rebuild it, the British opted to construct an even more ambitious fort just uphill, to be named Fort Crown Point. A massive accidental fire in April 1773 destroyed the log and earth fortress entirely, leaving only the empty stone ruins of two barracks buildings standing. After the French and Indian War, the British left only a skeletal force at the fort, which yielded easily to Captain Seth Warner and 100 Green Mountain Boys, an American militia, on May 12, 1775 in the Battle of Crown Point at the start of the American Revolutionary War. The 111 cannons captured from the British at Crown Point proved valuable in driving the British out of Boston. Now 265 years old, the barracks ruins are still being carefully preserved. Fort Crown Point was used as a staging ground by Benedict Arnold during the war for his navy on Lake Champlain. Following the destruction of that navy in 1776 in the Battle of Valcour Island, the fort was abandoned to the British under General John Burgoyne early in the summer of 1777. It was abandoned for good in 1780. British General Geoffrey Amherst began building Fort Crown Point following his capture of Fort Ticonderoga, 15 miles to the south. Fort Ticonderoga sits at an important strategic location between Lake Champlain and Lake George, New York, home to Fort William Henry, dominating trade routes between the British-controlled Hudson River Valley and the French-controlled St. Lawrence River Valley. Mountains surrounding the Appalachian Valley channeled troop movements into the portion of that valley created by La Chute, a narrow 3.5-mile river linking the two lakes where a portage was necessitated by numerous rapids and waterfalls. This large 18th century star fort was first built by the French between 1755 and 1757 during the height of the French and Indian War. The walls were 7 feet high and 14 feet thick, and the whole works was surrounded by a steep slope and a dry moat 5 feet deep and 15 feet wide. When the walls were first erected in 1756, they were made of squared wooden timbers with earth filling the gap. The French then began to dress the walls with stone from a quarry about a mile away, although this work was never fully completed. The fort contained 3 barracks and 4 storehouses. One bastion held a bakery capable of producing 60 loaves of bread a day. During a 1758 battle, 4,000 French defenders were able to repel an attack by 16,000 British troops near the fort. In 1759, the British returned and drove a token French garrison from the fort. During the Revolutionary War, when the British controlled the fort, it was captured on May 10, 1775, in a surprise attack by the Green Mountain Boys and other state militia under the command of Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold. Cannons taken from Fort Ticonderoga were also transported to Boston to lift its siege by the British. In the years following the Revolutionary War, area residents had stripped Fort Ticonderoga of usable building materials, even melting some of the cannons down for their metal. In 1785, the fort's lands became the property of the state of New York, which donated the property to Columbia and Union colleges in 1803. The colleges, in turn, sold the property to American horticulturalist William Ferris Pell, a member of the politically important Pell family, in 1820. Pell first spotted the fort's ruins during a steamboat trip to Burlington, Vermont, and while preserving the fort's remaining stonework, he built a Palladian-style country estate on the grounds, which he named the Pavilion. The home was later converted into a hotel to serve tourists. The Pell family later hired English architect Alfred Bossum to restore the fort, which was formally opened to the public in 1909 as an historic site. Once thought to be impenetrable, Fort Ticonderoga had one important strategic weakness which its builders had overlooked: the nearby high ground on Mount Defiance, where attackers could fire down upon the fort from above. British forces under General John Burgoyne dragged their cannons to the top of Mount Defiance in June 1777 and drove out the Continental Army troops without even firing a single shot. Subsequently, in September 1777, John Brown led 500 Americans in an unsuccessful attempt to capture the fort from about 100 British defenders. But I need to be quick up here, for there's a severe thunderstorm quickly moving in, and I'm standing atop the highest point around, surrounded by radio transmission towers and a tall steel flagpole. Besides, I have to race the storm back to camp, for I left all the trailer windows open. I made it just in time for this rain, hail, and wind to arrive back at camp about 60 seconds after I did. Following another quick ad break to pay the bills, we'll explore the historic towns of Ticonderoga and Port Henry, so stay tuned. The town of Ticonderoga, population 5,000, sits along what was once the portage on the Lachute River. It was formed in 1804 from part of the town of Crown Point. By the end of the 18th century, Ticonderoga's economy was built on the timber harvested from the surrounding Adirondack Mountains. It was noted for producing wood products such as paper and lead pencils, as graphite was mined nearby as well. Only a 15-minute drive from our campground at Crown Point, Ticonderoga is the largest town in the area and provides many supplies that campers may need during a stay in the region. Directly across Lake Champlain's Bulwaga Bay from our campground sits the tiny, historic hamlet of Port Henry, New York. The tract of land that became Port Henry was set aside by the British Crown for veterans of the French and Indian War. A mill was built here in 1765, but no other European American settlers arrived until 1785, after the American Revolutionary War, and the village wasn't incorporated until 1869. Following a public referendum, the village was subsequently dissolved in 2017 and was absorbed by the nearby town of Mariah, the birth and death of Port Henry. In its early years, timber harvesting was a major industry and 20 mills were located around Port Henry. The first dock was built on Lake Champlain by 1820 for shipping lumber to other ports. Early settlers in Port Henry discovered iron ore a few miles inland. Its extraction and processing became an important industry in the township for about 150 years. A blast furnace constructed in 1822 in Port Henry was one of the first in the United States, and Republic Steel established major operations in the county. The village residents used Lake Champlain and the Hudson River to transport its ore and products to major markets such as Albany and New York City. Later, a railroad connected the village to markets. We hope that you've enjoyed exploring Crown Point and Ticonderoga with us, along with Port Henry and all the wonderful things to see on this side of Lake Champlain. Coming up next week, we're going to be making our shortest move of the season and possibly our shortest move ever. We're going just 12 miles up the lake, but to explore the Vermont side of the Lake Champlain Valley. So if you're not yet a Grand Adventurer, I can't think of a better time than now for you to go smash that little subscribe button right down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and ring that notification bell to be sure that you never miss a Grand Adventure, which we premiere every Wednesday evening. We'd also be truly honored if you shared the channel with your friends, family, and on social media. Understand, it is extremely important to us that if you liked this episode, be sure to give us a big thumbs up down below. And while you're down below, that's where you'll find the comment section where we always love to hear from you. So until next week from Vermont, please remember life is nothing but a grand adventure. We'll see you then.